Hey everybody, Robert with RC Archery, and thank you for tuning into this week's Tuesday's Tip of the Week. So if you didn't watch the video last week, I'll go ahead and I'll put a link up here in this video so you can click through it and go back and watch it. Basically what I was doing was testing bare shaft tuning and group tuning and finding out for me and my equipment which one's going to give me the best groups down range. So I started out with a bare shaft tune at 20 yards, worked my way back to 50 yards to being able to do groups, measuring them, calculating the results, and doing all of that for the test. This week I actually want to go over the two different methods, let you know some things to look at on each one and kind of how they're going to work as far as the basic principles behind them. So when it comes to bare shaft tuning, there's really two different ways to bare shaft tune. Everybody's got their own standpoint behind this on which one they would rather do. Some people don't even know about both standpoints and they're just doing maybe what they've seen online. So the basic principles behind bare shaft tuning is to create clean arrow flight coming out of the bow, meaning that your arrow is coming out with zero direction as it leaves the bow. Everything is completely flat and level horizontally, and there's no left and right fishtailing of the arrow going on. Now, there's two ways to really go about that and ways that people look at this type of tuning. One is point of impact tuning, which meaning they're going to shoot a fletched arrow and a bare shaft arrow until they hit together or they're shooting in the same hole. Now that's, like I said, point of impact tuning. Maybe they do this at 20 yards, 30 yards, through paper, stuff like that. Basically, what they're doing is bringing both their groups of their arrows together. Now the other side of this is actually just shooting a bare shaft and making it have clean flight where it's hitting in the target in a straight line, meaning that whenever you're shooting this arrow, if it's hanging into the target and it's pointing a little bit one direction or the other, up or down, they're actually going to be working on the bow, adjusting things and tuning it until it hits in the target and it's level and there's no kick left or right on it. Now, basic principles behind this and what I do with my bow is I break this down into bringing together the cam lean and the arrow rest setup. So the way that I start with this is up close on paper. I normally go to 6 feet, so 2 yards. I'm going to shoot a bare shaft arrow through paper. And what I'm looking for there is a clean circle, what they call a bullet hole going through that piece of paper. Initially what I'm going to do is set up my arrow rest square in the middle of my riser. I'm going to run the arrow at 90 degrees on the string, so not knock high or knock low, just 90 degrees to start with to see what I'm getting. And on my yokes, I'm going to set them up to where, for me, I normally have a right hand tear. So what I'm going to do is set up the cam, on the top cam rather, to where it's straight up and down. Now, for most archers, they have a left tear. What they'll want to do is set up to where they can place this arrow on the side of the cam. It's going to cross over with the point at their D loop. And that's a pretty basic standpoint for most archers to go through, that they have yokes on their bow. If your bow does not have yokes and you're working with just the shims and the spacers on your cam, then for me, I would really just leave that alone to begin with. Set the arrow rest in the middle of the riser and shoot and see what you get. Now, what you're doing with this when you get out to a piece of paper like this, when you get a little bit further out, if you're shooting to point of impact, so say you shoot your fletched arrow here and this bare shaft lands off to the right with the tail of it to the left, this would be very similar to what you would see with the left tear. What you'll want to do at that point is adjust the arrow rest, adjust the yokes, or adjust the cam spacing to get everything back in line. I've done a video on bare shaft tuning in the past. It was actually a follow-up video to an instructional one that I had. I'm going to put that link here in this video as well. I would go back through, you can watch through that, and it goes a little bit more in detail on what to adjust for different type scenarios here and what you're looking for on your tuning. Now when it comes to group tuning, it's a little bit different ball game. What we're doing with group tuning is not worrying about a perfect bare shaft point of impact or a perfect bare shaft entry into the target. What we're actually doing is taking our fletched arrows that we're going to be shooting, and we're going to shoot them in groups, and we're going to tune to take out flyers. So when we look at this example here, this is 2 arrows that would have been shot that would have been in the 10 ring, and then we have 1 flyer that's high. Now we'll want to do this test multiple times. You don't want to just shoot one group and say, okay, I need to change this. You want to shoot multiple groups and really track what you're getting on variances. For me, when I'm bare shaft tuning and I have completely straight arrow on the bare shaft, or point of impact bare shaft tuning where my fletch and my bare shaft hit together, I get a lot of these high random misses. Basically my dot, it'll break in the middle of the target, the shot will feel great, but the arrow will go high. In a situation like that, what I'm going to do is start moving my arrow rest down, and that's going to help me eliminate this high random miss. I'll do the same thing if I'm getting left and right random misses as well. So say I made a really great shot, but it lands over here to the right on the target. What I'll do is I'll move my arrow rest to the left, and I'll start eliminating these random misses that aren't grouping with the rest of my arrows. Now, when I'm doing that, it's not huge movements with the arrow rest. It's very minute, very small movements with it. And it really, if having a good quality arrow rest where you can do micro adjustments with it is very key to being able to do this type of method and make it work the best for you. Now, before you do any type of tuning, whether it be group tuning like this or bare shaft tuning, there's several steps you need to take in order to make sure that the end game of your bare shaft tuning or your end game as your group tuning is giving you results that aren't something else actually creeping in and causing the problem.
I want to take a quick moment here and thank my channel sponsors. And just a reminder, support those that support this channel. They're the ones that are making this happen and allowing me to be able to make these videos. First up here is Archery Squad. They're a great company, highly involved in the youth side of archery. Make sure you use my discount code RobertRankin20 off for 20% off any purchase you make. Here's Twisted X Bowstrings, great quality string company. This is my personal bowstring company that I've used for the past 2 years. Owner operated. Shane builds all the strings himself. Last up here is Scratch Labs. They're a great company. They use all organic and all natural products for all their hydration and performance to fuel your body.
So as with anything, preparation is key. The preparation that you put in at the beginning will really show you the results at the end of what you're doing. Bare shaft tuning, group tuning, that's an end game. We need to put the work in before we get there to make sure that we're not dealing with any variables that could really throw us off on what we're trying to do. For me, I'm going to take every single arrow that I'm going to make and I'm going to shoot that arrow through paper as a bare shaft from 6 feet. What I'm doing here is I'm going to see how they're flexing out of the bow, and I'm going to make them all flex out of that bow the exact same way. So if that means tuning one and making it come out as a bullet hole, and then taking all the other arrows that I'm going to do and shooting them, I want them all to be that bullet hole. If the best that I can get out of an arrow for whatever reason is not a bullet hole and it's some other small tear, then I'm going to shoot every single arrow through paper and I'm going to achieve that same small tear. What I'm doing with that is I'm actually rotating this nock and I'm spine indexing my arrows. I've talked about this in my instructional videos in the past. I'll put a link down in the description below if you're interested in watching that video. That way you can see the full process on what I do with my arrows. But when you're spine indexing, you're making that arrow flex the exact same on every single arrow so that you have that consistency. Once I'm done with that process, the next thing I'm going to do is actually go through and fletch all my arrows. Now, I add steps in here. It's not just fletching and going out and shooting and tuning. I need to make sure that I have good clearance, and I also want to make sure that whatever hole and whatever tear that I was getting through paper with my bare shaft, I'm getting the exact same with my fletched arrow as well. Especially for me when I'm using a blade rest, I want to make sure that I'm getting adequate clearance over that blade. I'm not getting any kind of random kicks off of one of the edges of the vanes. For me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some spray foot powder and I'm going to spray it on the arrow. I don't spray it on the bow itself because normally I'm not worried about clearance as far as it hitting part of the riser or cables or anything crazy like that, and also just don't want to make a mess all over my bow. Spraying the arrow, that's adequate enough. I'll normally just spray the bottom part of my arrow here at the vanes, just on the last end point of this shaft. I'm going to load it really carefully into the bow, shoot it through the bow, and see what I'm getting. Now, with a blade rest, a lot of people try to, achieve absolute perfect clearance. You don't actually have to have absolute perfect clearance. You just need the right type. Again, you don't want the blade to hit the front edge of one of these vanes because it's going to kick the arrow. You want to make sure that that blade, if it's coming in contact with the arrow, or with the vanes or the arrow here at the back, it's actually going to hit a smooth flat spot. That way it's just going to flex. It's not going to have any problems. It's not going to have any weird and random kicks. After I've nock indexed all my arrows to where the cock vane is giving me adequate clearance, I'm going to shoot this through paper. I'm going to verify that I'm getting a bullet hole. If for some reason I'm not, I'm going to do some small adjustments on this nock again to make sure that I'm still getting that bullet hole. Now, as just a handy tip, if you have a nock tool where you can set it on the nock and turn the nock, or if you just do it by hand, do that. don't clip this arrow into the string and start twisting on it on the string. I see a lot of people do that. You're going to spread the ears out on these nocks. They're not going to fit the same way from one nock to the other, and it's going to cause you some weak problems on a nock to have it not coming off the string the same as well. From here, I'm going to go to a target, and I don't get crazy with barrel shaft tuning at this point or doing any kind of point of impact tuning other than just a French tune. Very basic, very simple, and I will say this, don't spend too much time on one tuning method and really stress yourself out and make yourself crazy over it. Each one of them actually builds on top of the other, and they're all going to start coming together as you're tuning, and you'll really start to realize that they're not as critical as what you might think, where you have to be absolute 100% perfect every single step all the way through. Now, the more care and the more detail that you put into it, the better you're going to have your next step be, the easier it's going to be. But don't kill yourself and stress yourself out. Make sure you're getting good, consistent results, and then go on to the next one and let it all build. For a French tune, that is 2 shooting distance. Normally what I'll do is I'll have a 3-spot target on the face of my target butt here, whether that be a Vegas face or maybe a vertical face like what you would see with World Archery. But what I'll do is I'll sight my bow in at 20 yards, and I'm going to hit dead center of the X-ring at 20 yards. I'm going to use my same sight setting as what I've used to set in for that 20 yards. I'm going to move back to 40 yards, and then I'm going to shoot groups. And basically what I'm looking for is for everything to be in a line, whether it's at 20 yards or at 40 yards, and that's going to show me that the center shot and the power stroke of that string is aligning and matching, and it's sending all my arrows out of that bow left to right in a straight manner. So after I French tune my bow, that's when I go to group tuning. Personally for me, that's what I find works the best, again, for my setups, and because of the testing that I've done multiple times in the past, that's what I found that is most reliable for my best groups and most consistent scoring downrange. So I will go straight to that group tuning, and that's what I'm going to look for, as we talked about earlier, on different adjustments and what's going on. Now, I want to talk just a second on the group tuning and give you an idea of what you're looking at when you're talking about the benefits of group tuning. As I said before, with barrel shaft tuning, you're really looking for that arrow to come straight out of the bow to where there's no influence on it, there's no left, right, up, or down, and it's just hovering straight out of that bow. For me, the standpoint behind that is looking at that is there's variables on what you can do to control the arrow flight to make it veer off target in unpredictable manners and open up groups. That's what I see in my testing, and that's what I've found to be, you know, the deciding factor on what I do. With group tuning, you're giving the arrow a slight bit of direction coming out of the bow, and that helps fight the inconsistencies. Now, you'll hear arguments about this both directions. Some people think that's not as accurate, some people think it is. I've done the testing. For me, group tuning is more accurate, and I look at it basically like this. If I hold this arrow perfectly straight like this and I let go of it right now, where's it going to fall? That time it fell towards me. If I do it again, it falls towards the camera. It's going to be different every single time. So when you're shooting your bow and the arrow's coming out with no influence on it at all, if you influence it just a little bit with your grip pressure and it's different from what you did the last arrow, if your facial contact is different, if you move your hand in a different manner with your release, all that is going to allow that arrow to be taken off course. And for me, what I found is it opens your groups up, because it's going to allow it to go left, it's going to allow it to go right or up or down, and you're not going to be able to plan for that downrange. Now, when we talk about group tuning, a slight direction on the arrow, so you're not having the arrow kick out real crooked or sideways or anything, it's very small. But if I hold this arrow with a slight direction to it, where it's at an angle in my hand right here, and I let go, it's going to fall to the left every single time, because this is the way that I'm holding it. Now, if you have some inconsistencies with your grip, with your release execution, with your facial contact, is it going to change that? Well, it's going to apply a different force to the arrow. But instead of that arrow coming out at a completely sideways, you know, left or right, or whoever, you know, might be from a barrel shaft, it's still going to want to come out with a little bit of slight direction to it, and that's going to fight whatever inconsistency that you placed in it. And really what you're looking at with group tuning by adding that little bit of direction to it is a consistent point of impact downrange, so you can adjust your sight to it, you can accommodate for what you're seeing, and you can get all your arrows to be hitting in a pattern in a tighter group and more predictably where they're going to go. That's why I like group tune, and that's why I will choose that to do with my bow every single time. Now, it's a target rig. I have some ideas on variables. It might change if you're using drop away versus a blade rest. It might change, you know, obviously for other types of setups, hunting setups and different things like that. That's something that I would like to test long term and really see what it's going down with, but I know for my target rig with a blade rest, that's what I find the best results with. Appreciate everybody watching today. Hopefully this video will give you an idea on what's going on. Again, watch the Barre shaft tuning video that I linked down in the instructions, or down in the description below. My instructional videos will be there as well as all the site sponsors that we're going to have on this channel too. That way you can get their information, you can get my discount code for them, and everything going on. I'm going to have a giveaway coming up later this week. Keep an eye out for my channel, keep an eye out for the video coming. I just hit 3,000 subscribers, so thank you each and every one of you for the subscriptions, for sharing the videos that I'm doing and getting my name and getting my information out to other people and allowing them to benefit from it just as well as you did. So again, thank y'all for watching. I'll see you next time.